Not only is Mount Everest the highest mountain in the world, but it also hides a lot of interesting and unusual things. The 15 most peculiar features of the tallest mountain on Earth are being discussed today. Let's start with number 15, the Yeti. And fascinating folklore centers on Mount Everest, the world's highest mountain. This legend centers around the Yeti, also known as the Abominable Snowman. Legend has it that the Yeti, an ape-like beast native to the Himalayas, prowls the high altitudes. The enigma surrounding this enigmatic being has persisted for ages due to religious beliefs and folklore. Local names and tales portray the Yeti as a supernatural entity that lives in glaciers. It is characterized as a huge man-like figure with long brown hair and is strongly embedded in Himalayan culture. Long before Buddhism came into being, the Bon religion held the Yeti in high esteem as a formidable being who walks like a man. Tales from the Himalayas about monsters that could devour people or, in a lesser guise, sheep, initially made their way to Western ears in the 19th century. The tales acquired popularity when Western mountaineers explored the Himalayas more extensively in the 20th century, after they had been written off as little more than folklore. The work of the famous British climber Eric Shipton was among the most intriguing pieces of evidence. An ice axe and a huge, human-like footprint in the snow were the subjects of his 1951 shot, which sparked a worldwide frenzy. Similar footprints were found on the BFO Glacier in the Karakoram, according to Shipton, which further added to the mystery. Mount Everest and the other Himalayan peaks are believed to be haunted by the Yeti for good reason. The region is mostly uncharted due to its severe climate and inaccessible terrain, suggesting the existence of hidden, undiscovered animals. Along with other sighting reports and unexplained footprints, Shipton's shot provides intriguing, if not definitive, evidence that keeps the Yeti mythology alive. A few of researchers have tested hair samples and other purported relics from the Yeti for DNA, but the majority of experts are still dubious. Even though most of these investigations have found samples from well-known animals, like bears, the prospect of a new species is intriguing. Strange sights and unsettling encounters in the high-altitude landscape are commonly reported by mountaineers and explorers, giving personal testimonials that further deepen this enigma. Number 14. Eric Venom. As tough as it may seem, Eric Venom had an additional obstacle on his path to conquering Mount Everest. Even though he became blind in 2013, Venom was determined not to let that stop him from living. He got famous after being the first blind person to climb Mount Everest on May 25, 2001. Time magazine featured him. Where did he get the energy to pull off such an incredible feat? Dedicated to helping individuals of all abilities overcome challenges, become better problem solvers, form stronger teams, and serve others, No Barriers was co-founded by Venom in 2005. As the organization's inspiring slogan puts it, "What's within you is stronger than what's in your way." It captures the tenacity and determination that Vin represents. Climbing Everest wasn't an easy feat for him. At first, the Sherpa guides were afraid to accompany the trip because of the blind person's inability to see. The Sherpas were skeptical about Venom's ability before he reached Kathmandu, but as he breezed through the busy city, they decided to back the climb. Fellow climbers still didn't believe Venom could get it to the top safely, even with the Sherpas. But he wasn't only competent. His 16 years of climbing expertise meant he often helped his companions. Suppressing his detractors and cementing his place among the select few who have ascended the world's highest mountain, Ven became the first blind person in history to reach the top of Everest. He joined an exclusive club of over 50 individuals who have reached the summit of every continent by 2008, having completed the 7 summits as well. Even though he doesn't see in the conventional sense, Eric Venom has redefined disability as one of the world's best climbers. Number 13. The traffic jams. For a long time, explorers from all over the world have felt an irresistible pull toward Mount Everest. However, the goal of reaching the peak is now too expensive. Congestion on Earth's highest peak, The mountain's already thin pathways have become bottlenecks due to the influx of climbers trying to reach the peak in recent years, prompting major concerns over logistics and safety. Expeditions from all over the globe assemble on the same narrow paths in May, the peak climbing season, competing for the little window of favorable weather to make their last push. Particularly at the summit ridge, climbers often wait in line for hours to either ascend or descend, making it a choke point. An intense discussion ensued on whether Everest is just too congested when a picture taken by a Nepali mountaineer went viral, depicting hundreds of climbers pressed close on the ridge. Some have compared it to being in line at a crowded ski resort, rather than successfully completing a challenging mountain climb. Expert tour guides, however, will warn you that those lineups are only the beginning. Inexperienced climbers and their hasty, wrong judgments are the root of the problem. Technical blunders, like as using ascenders on flat terrain, might further impede whole groups, and snow climbers can stop them in their tracks. Because of this issue, the world's highest point is becoming one of the most dangerous waiting rooms on Earth. Number 12. Trash Dump. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the first to stand atop Mount Everest in 1953, and since then, many of climbers have done more than just follow in their footsteps. In 26,400 feet, Mount Everest has become a high-altitude garbage dump, especially in the South Camp, the last camp before the summit. The mountain is the gem of the Himalayas. The South Camp has become a freezing wasteland of forgotten tents, food packaging, gas canisters, oxygen bottles, and ropes. Tackling this devastation isn't like your typical spring cleaning either. Combating the low oxygen levels, freezing temperatures, and erratic weather has become an epic battle for garbage duty. In a single climbing season, a group of troops and Sherpas who were financed by the government removed 11 tons of trash from Everest. Impressive, no doubt, but the south side still has an estimated 40 to 50 tons of debris, much of it from early explorers who didn't bother to carry off their rubbish before the laws were more stringent. Cleaning up after the disaster will not be an easy task. At lower elevations and at base camp, troops deal with the devastation, while courageous Sherpas cross the danger zone to remove frozen refuse. The garbage is then sorted. The biodegradable items are distributed to the adjacent settlements, while the non-biodegradable ones are conveyed by yaks and porters to Kathmandu for recycling. At Gorak Shep, a hamlet close to Everest, the Mount Everest Biogas Project converts human waste into biogas, providing a glimmer of hope among this challenging effort. Next, there's Sagarmatha Next, a group that's taking waste and repurposing it into something beautiful. They want to construct a facility close to Namche Bazaar that combines art with community development and garbage management. As a result of increased awareness of environmental issues and more stringent restrictions, modern mountaineers are more conscientious about their actions. However, the Nepalese government has issued a decree: return your rubbish or face consequences. These initiatives have reduced the rate of new trash, but dealing with decades' worth of trash is still a huge problem. It will take years for the cleaning staff to accomplish their task of clearing Everest of its trash legacy. Although Everest is a tall mountain, the garbage issue is much greater, and the fight to maintain the mountain clean is far from over. Number 11. The world's highest weather station. The construction of the highest weather station in the world occurred on the southeast ridge of Mount Everest on May 23, 2019, marking a watershed milestone in climate research. This scientific achievement was part of a larger effort by the National Geographic Society, Tribhuvan University, and the Nepalese government to better understand the subtropical jet stream and other important climatic phenomena. The weather station, which is 7 feet tall and weighs over 110 pounds, was designed to withstand the harsh conditions found on Everest, such as intense cold and hurricane-force winds. The group, consisting of 6 Sherpas and scientists Tom Matthews and Baker Perry, had rigorous testing in Nepal and New Hampshire before practicing rapid and accurate assembly. Despite their best efforts, they encountered a major obstacle that threatened the mission's success: the disappearance of a vital tube for the wind sensor. Participating in the voyage were more than 30 specialists from disciplines as diverse as geology, biology, mapping, climate science, and glaciology. Using high-resolution lasers to map the terrain, sensors to monitor plant growth, and water, snow, and rock samples, the team surveyed Everest and the Khumbu Valley at various heights, drilling old ice cores from a glacier on the South Col, a location of great scientific interest because of its preserved old ice, was one of the major accomplishments. These ice cores, which date the glacier to an estimated 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, provide crucial information on its age and climate history. Number 10. The strange case of Maurice Wilson. Among the many courageous individuals who have tried to climb Everest, Maurice Wilson is among the most adventurous. In 1934, this aviator and soldier from Britain embarked on a somewhat unusual quest to climb the peak. Wilson, in contrast to the majority of his contemporaries, had neither climbing expertise nor extensive aviation knowledge. His faith and resolve drove him to concoct a daring plan. He would learn to fly, land close to Everest, and then ascend to the peak. After suffering severe wounds from gunfire during World War I, Wilson set off on his adventure. He turned down a military pension despite the fact that he never completely recovered. Feeling a spiritual mission to conquer the mountain, Wilson described it in his journal as the job I've been given to do. This was inspired by the catastrophic 1924 Everest expedition of George Mallory and Andrew Irvine. Although he lacked experience in both flying and climbing, Wilson still purchased a de Havilland 60 Durham's Moth and gave it the name Everest. Although Wilson's flying instructor had doubts about his ability to reach India, his determination remained unwavering. He vowed to triumph or perish trying. An unintentional mishap that postponed his departure was one of several obstacles he encountered on his travels. On May 21st, Wilson defied the Air Ministry's prohibition on his flying by taking off illegally. He made it to Cairo and then Gwad in western India, exceeding the plane's predicted range. During his winter in Darjeeling, Wilson encountered 3 Sherpas, Tawang, Rinzing, and Sairing, who had been on an earlier Everest expedition and were pretending to be Buddhist monks after being refused entrance into Tibet. They set out on a punishing 21-day hike to reach the Rongbuk Monastery, where they were warmly greeted and given supplies from a previous journey. Despite suffering from snow blindness and bruises, Wilson tried the climb again. In spite of everything, he kept a detailed journal in which he detailed his dreams, problems, and unwavering persistence. The notes in his journal show that he had an unyielding will to live, even when his trip took dangerous detours. Number 9. The cost to climb. Assume that climbing the highest peak in the world would not cost you a fortune? Well, reconsider. As if the physical demands of climbing Everest weren't enough, there is still the financial hurdle to overcome. Even though the renowned summit seems like it might be reached without spending a fortune, getting the required licenses and resources is no picnic. Climbing permits in Nepal will soon be more expensive in an effort to reduce congestion and increase security. A foreign climber's permit to Everest will cost $115,000 in 2025, up from $11,000 in 2024. The goal is to make mountain tourism more efficient and to regulate the number of climbers more effectively. After doing away with the group system and replacing it with a flat price for individual climbers in the spring of 2015, Nepal discontinued its pricing review program. This steep increase in price reflects the increasing popularity of Everest, despite its formidable obstacles. With 658 successful summit attempts in 2022 and 478 permits granted in 2023, Nepal set a new record. Climbers are prepared to put a lot of money into their goal, and these numbers suggest that Everest is still appealing. Climbing is already challenging, and the weather is completely out of control. Climbers have had it rough in recent seasons, with record-high rescue and injury rates due to increasing weather conditions, including freezing temperatures and strong winds. Even nevertheless, explorers from all over the globe are still drawn to Everest because of its undeniable charm. The majority of mountaineers choose to climb Everest from the Nepalese side, even though there are more accessible and less expensive routes from China. Because of this choice, Nepal's economy benefits greatly. In the spring, Everest alone brings in over $5 million. Number 8. Yiro Miura. The Japanese athlete Yiro Miura is well known for his outstanding athletic accomplishments. The early exposure to snow sports that Miura had as a child came from his father, Kenzo Miura, who competed in skiing events as early as elementary school. Miura was born on October 12, 1932, in Aomori City, Japan. At Hokkaido University, he trained professionally to follow his heart. His specialty was backcountry skiing, which required expertise in alpine climbing in the winter, but he also did quite well on speed and downhill runs. He achieved a speed of 172.02 kilometers per h when speed skiing in Italy in July 1964, which was the new world record. Skiing down bigger slopes helped him hone his mountaineering abilities. Using a parachute to delay his drop, Miura became the first person to ski on Mount Everest on May 6, 1970. From the South Col, he descended 6,600 feet in a vertical fashion. He stopped 250 feet short of a huge chasm after a 300-foot fall. The Man Who Skied Down Everest, the first sports film to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary in 1975, documented this remarkable achievement. Ski descents on 7 of Europe's highest peaks were also accomplished by Miura between 1978 and 1985. Later, in 2003, at the age of 70, he became the oldest person to reach the top of Mount Everest. He went on to break that record at the ages of 75 and 80, and he finally did it on May 23, 2013, when he was 80 years old. The organic rice, soybeans, miso soup, eggs, and fish that he ate for so long gave him vigor and life, he said in 2008. Even after a serious skiing injury, he trained intensely, walking with weights and simulating high-altitude circumstances in a low-oxygen chamber. As a freestyle skier and alpinist, his son Gautam Miura has taken on the family tradition. Who knows, maybe he'll be the first to snowboard down Everest. Number 7. The changing height. Mount Everest isn't only difficult to scale, it's also difficult to quantify. Because of its dynamic character and the capriciousness of tectonic plates, the world's highest mountain has, over the years, kept surveyors on their toes, both literally and metaphorically. The Survey of India estimated Everest's height at 29,029 feet in 1954, excluding the mountain's snowy peak, possibly because they saw it as the mountain's ever-changing hairdo. This number remained stable for many years until technological advancements and a hint of global competition stoked the fires. Now comes the important question. When measuring Everest, do we include its icy peak or its rocky scalp? The mountain's two proud owners, China and Nepal, got into a little friendly quarrel about this. Possibly wishing to give Everest its due, Nepal decided to include the snow and ice in their measurement, whereas the Chinese selected the non-nonsense rock-bottom method. Now we're in 2020, a year that's sure to throw a few curveballs like a newfound peace atop the peak of Everest. Astoundingly, teams from China and Nepal worked together, overcoming the frigid winds and thin air to finally settle the score. They finally settled on 29,032 feet as the new official height after a lot of fiddling with the numbers and GPS. Indeed, it is correct. Everest did in fact grow by a very small 3 feet, maybe even taller now that the whole globe was gazing. However, Everest isn't one to sit on its hands. The mountain is in a perpetual state of slow-motion wrestling as the Indian Ocean and Eurasian tectonic plates push and pull against one another, since it rests on a restless border between them. Like a natural growth spurt, Everest is being propelled higher and higher over time. No one who is math-challenged or afraid of heights should attempt to measure Everest. A combination of trigonometry, global positioning system technology, and unwavering resolve is used by surveyors. While China's sea level was determined by the Yellow Sea, Nepal's was determined by the Bay of Bengal. In the pursuit of extreme precision, Teams from both nations bravely faced the weather as they made their way to the peak to set their high-tech devices. Finally, even the loftiest mountains have space to expand or contract. Everest is a magnificent example of this. Its precise altitude may constantly changing, but its symbolic significance is unwavering. Number 6. Kamita Sherpa. Legendary Nepalese climber Kamita Sherpa achieved unprecedented success on Mount Everest. He was born into a climbing family with long roots in Nepal. Ming Singh Sherpa, his father, was an early Everest professional guide after Nepal's opening to foreign climbers in 1950. In the 35 years since he followed in his father's climbing footsteps, Kamita has grown into one of the world's most renowned and successful climbers. After setting a new record of 25 successful ascents of Everest in May, Kamita has made history on many occasions, most notably by completing his 26th successful ascent of the world's highest peak. This most recent accomplishment is the cherry on top of an already impressive career. In 1994, after a failed effort in 1992, Kamita embarked on his quest with his first Everest descent. He has shown his extreme physical endurance and extensive knowledge of high-altitude mountaineering by ascending Everest almost years since then. After two other climbers had previously held the record of 21 peaks, he broke it in May 2018 with his 22nd. Over the following years, he kept shattering his own records. He reached his 24th summit on May 15, 2019, a record-breaking 25th ascent in 2021, and a record-breaking 24th summit only 6 days after that. He solidified his position as the climber with the most summits of Everest with his 26th summit. His ties to Mount Everest are profound. While still a young boy, Kamita followed in his pioneering father's footsteps by taking a job as a porter to Everest Base Camp when he was 12 years old. His career was influenced by his early encounters with the mountain's beauty and difficulties. Foreign climbers seeking to reach the top rely on Sherpa guides like him for both intellectual and physical assistance in negotiating the mountain's challenging landscape. Number 5. Life finds a way. At 29,032 feet, Mount Everest stands as a symbol of the extremes of nature and a place where living seemed unattainable. Still, the fact that life can exist on Everest despite the fact that it defies all survival rules is a tremendous demonstration of nature's adaptation and persistence. There is very little vegetation on Everest. At an elevation of almost 21,000 feet, the tallest plant known to science is a moss that clings to rocks. The stony terrain is dotted with spots of greenery from the plant Araria, which thrives in areas where temperatures drop. Lower on the mountain, below 18,000 feet, vegetation is progressively growing in the Everest region, according to recent research utilizing satellite data from 1993 to 2018. Plants are now sprouting in regions that were previously considered barren, indicating small but important changes in the ecology. Although the vegetation on Everest is somewhat scarce, the story of survival told by the animals is really remarkable. Among the non-microscopic permanent residents of Earth, the black jumping spider is the tallest, reaching a height of 22,000 feet. These hardy, tiny creatures get by on insects that the wind carries. Particularly interesting is the variety of birds spotted on Everest. Sightings of the bar-headed geese, a species renowned for its extraordinary migratory stamina, have been reported even above the peak. These geese were seen flying over the summit in 1953 by George Low during the famous ascent of Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary. Another robust bird species, the chack, has been seen at an altitude of 25,000 feet at the South Col, while the yellow-billed chough has been seen at an altitude of 26,000 feet. At elevations of up to 14,000 feet, Everest is home to a wide variety of wildlife, including the rare red panda and the Himalayan black bear. Life finds a way even in the most inhospitable environments. The flora and animals of Everest not only endure but flourish, demonstrating that nature is unstoppable even in the face of extreme adversity. Number 4. The Sherpas. Ascents of Mount Everest often need extensive training over many years and a constant supply of supplementary oxygen for the climbers. To the Sherpas, however, it's business as usual. The Sherpas are a mountainous Tibetan and Nepalese ethnic group who have lived in the Himalayas for a very long time and developed a strong bond with the mountain range. The climbing community, particularly on Everest, holds them in high esteem because to their extensive mountain expertise and their essential roles as porters and guides. The remarkable physical adaptations of the Sherpas enable them to flourish in environments where others have difficulties. Since the oxygen levels on Everest are only 1/3 of what they are at sea level, the majority of climbers suffer from altitude sickness and depend significantly on breathing oxygen. Yet, the Sherpas seem to overcome these obstacles, performing astonishingly well in thin air, a phenomenon that has long captivated mountaineers and scientists. Sherpas have developed distinctive physiological features that give them extraordinary stamina, according to studies. The mitochondria in their cells are an important site of adaptability. The mitochondria of a Sherpa are much better at converting oxygen into energy than those of a person from a lower altitude. Because of their efficiency, they can produce more energy while using less oxygen. Another important change is in their cardiovascular system, namely in the tiny blood capillaries that carry oxygen. Blood flow in these arteries is unaffected in Sherpas even at high elevations, whereas it decreases in non-Sherpas. With their improved microcirculation, Sherpas are able to disperse oxygen more efficiently. The Sherpas' strength comes from more than simply their genes. It also comes from their skill and stamina. Consider their efficiency and swiftness on Everest as an example. While other climbers took almost a day to descend from the peak, a Sherpa managed it in only 2 hours during a research mission. Not only that, but he also made a casual pit stop for tea. Their remarkable mental and physical endurance is on full display here. With a combination of exceptional physiology, decades of expertise, and unparalleled talent, the Sherpas effortlessly conquer the world's highest peaks in the field of high-altitude climbing. Number 3. Reinhold Messner. Climbing Everest is no picnic. It's a terrifying, lung-busting struggle where oxygen deprivation might ruin your dream climb. Reinhold Messner seems to have either completely missed or just disregarded the warning that most climbers would not dare try to summit without supplementary oxygen. Renowned for pushing the edges of what is possible, Reinhold Messner was born in 1944 in Italy and is a great climber and polar explorer. He accomplished the apparently impossible in 1978 by climbing Everest without using any supplementary oxygen. Messner was climbing the highest peak in the world while using only the thin air of the death zone for breathing, when the rest of us would have trouble catching our breath at sea level after a vigorous jog. At an altitude of above 13,000 meters, the oxygen content in the air is just 1/3 that at sea level. You surely don't want to risk altitude sickness, hypoxia, cerebral and pulmonary edema, and other diseases at the top of the globe. Therefore, most climbers pack bottled oxygen to prevent them. Messner and his climbing companion Peter Habeler, however, ignored the cold weather warnings in May 1978. Beginning at an elevation of around 26,200 feet, they ascended to the peak. Habeler maybe sensibly sped back down, but Messner remained, relishing the occasion. This historic ascent rewrote the rules of high-altitude climbing by proving that it was feasible to reach the summit of Everest without the use of supplementary oxygen. And since Messner was clearly not satisfied with just that one extraordinary performance, he came back 2 years later for another. Returning to the north face of Everest, he attempted a solo climb in 1980, this time without oxygen. On August 20th, 1980, after 3 exhausting days of battling the merciless weather and a fall into a crevasse, Messner stood alone on the summit, firmly establishing himself as one of the greatest mountaineers of all time. Everest was just the beginning for Messner. He eventually became the first person to reach the summit of every one of the 14 peaks in the globe that are more than 26,000 feet in elevation, sometimes doing it on his own and pioneering new trails. He has redefined mountaineering and the unattainable as a mere task to be conquered. His accomplishments go beyond just reaching the peak. Number 2. Base jumping. Climbing Mount Everest alone isn't thrilling enough for some travelers. They need more of a rush. Now we have Valery Rofov, a Russian daredevil who felt that reaching the summit of the planet was only the beginning. Risky activities like base jumping, in which human bravery dances exhilaratingly with gravity, have recently taken place against the background of Mount Everest. Jumping from fixed objects with a parachute is known as base jumping, which is an abbreviation for building antenna span in Earth. Everest has become a popular location for these heart-pounding adventures. Exercising extreme measures as shown by Valery Rofov's 2013 record-breaking leap. He broke the previous record for highest base jump by launching himself from 23,618 feet in the air. Performing such a daring action in the treacherous Everest environment was no ordinary feat. It was a showcase of technical perfection, courage, and talent. Jumping from such a great height, in such harsh circumstances, is the main obstacle to base jumping from Everest. It is more taxing to move about at his leap height, since the air is thin and oxygen levels are low. Extremely low air pressure and bone-chilling cold need specific equipment. He couldn't have gotten through the treacherous mountain weather and unpredictability without his wingsuit, which not only let him soar through the air, but also withstood the freezing temperatures. Jumping from Everest is an experience that develops in a series of terrifying steps. The free fall, or jumping from the cliff face into the void, comes first. Because there is less vertical area for the jumper to generate speed before transitioning into the glide on Everest, this phase is very hard. The change from free fall to controlled flight is crucial, yet the rarefied air is dangerous and unexpected. His accomplishment, however, was the product of rigorous testing and preparation, as many aspects of the mechanics of base jumping from great heights remain unknown. After that change, the jumper goes into glide mode, where they accelerate through the air. After a roughly minute-long flight at a speed of around 124 meters per hour, he landed safely on the Rongbuk Glacier, which was 3,300 feet below his jumping point. The jumper must use pinpoint accuracy and navigational skills to successfully navigate this section of the leap, which is characterized by strong winds and unpredictable weather conditions. Ultimately, his leap served as a powerful symbol of the indomitable human spirit and its will to discover and overcome any obstacle, no matter how harsh the circumstances. For those with the courage to jump from the highest point on Earth, Everest provides the perfect platform for daring exploits at great heights. Number 1. It takes time to climb. In what amount of time can one climb the highest peak on Earth? Mount Everest isn't a sprint. It's a marathon, and the average time to climb it is about 10 weeks, but may take up to 30 days. To that end, why is the climb to the peak so arduous? The key is to master the mountain's challenging circumstances while also preparing for them. Climbers begin their ascent of Everest long before they ever set foot on the peak. Mental and physical preparation for this endeavor might take months, if not years. Endurance, strength, and cardiovascular fitness are the primary goals of the rigorous training program. In order to survive the high-altitude trek, climbers also perfect their technical abilities, becoming experts in ice climbing and crevasse rescue. At 17,598 feet, Everest Base Camp is the starting point for the trek once it reaches Everest. Here, climbers start the vital process of acclimatization, when they spend around 2 weeks in base camp to acclimate to the low oxygen levels while also gathering supplies and organizing logistics. In order to avoid the potentially fatal effects of altitude sickness, acclimatization is essential. The ascent begins at base camp and continues in stages with a succession of camps spaced at increasing heights. Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, and Camp 4, the penultimate halt before the peak. More time for acclimatization is built into every climb stage. The strenuous journey between the two camps might last up to 6 weeks. The ascent and descent between camps is a common climbing tactic known as climbing high and sleeping low, which allows climbers' bodies to adjust to the ever-decreasing air pressure. Right now, depending on the weather, the most important part of the climb is the last push from Camp 4 to the summit, above 26,247 feet, in what is referred to as the death zone. Oxygen levels are too low to support human life for an extended period of time. Climbers usually leave Camp 4 in the early morning to make the most of daylight and escape the deadly afternoon winds. The climb usually takes about 10 to 12 hours to reach the summit. Although climbing to the peak is an incredible feat, descending is just as perilous, if not more so. After reaching the peak, descending to Camp 4 might take anything from 4 to 8 hours, and getting down to base camp can take anywhere from a few days to a week. At this point, climbers are usually psychologically and physically drained, so descending is a real test of strength and determination. Finally, getting to the summit of Everest isn't the most important part. What matters is enduring the arduous ascent, which challenges one's mental and physical fortitude to its limits. It's a challenging trek that calls both calm determination and reverence for the mountain's might. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.